Good morning. Welcome again to Morning Devotions, and thank you again so much for our time together. I'm greatly looking forward to seeing you in the services tonight or in one of the services tomorrow in all of our different locations. I'm going to be preaching on the God who gives not just life to all men, but the God who created all men from one man and chose the exact times and places for us to be born so that we might seek Him. It is a great study on the sovereignty of God and the love of our Father. But right now, I want us to think back to, a few days ago when we began to talk about pretenders. You remember that passage out of Proverbs chapter 12, verse 9, pretenders? Well, Proverbs talks more about pretenders. Solomon teaches his son, one man pretends to be rich, yet has nothing. Another pretends to be poor, yet has great wealth. Now, let me look at this with you from the position of doing business. When I was a young man, I talk a lot about my dad. Sometimes I get to missing him. When I was a young man, I asked my dad, why do you need such a nice car? Dad always wanted a nice car because he was a salesman and he drove all the time, and I thought that's why he wanted a nice car. He said, David, people have to think that you're successful or they won't do business with you. And I remember thinking, well, that's strange. Do they really go out in the parking lot and look at your car? And he said, oftentimes they walk you out to your car. They walk you out to the parking lot afterwards to see if you're a fly-by-night, if you're some guy who's just getting started, or if you're the real deal. And he said, you need to make sure that you show that you are successful. I said, oh, okay. So as a young man, I took that and accepted it. But now over the years, I've learned that in business, one of the most important things you can do is ask yourself, does this person really have the ability to do this business transaction? One man pretends to be rich, yet has nothing. One man walks around in, the Armani shop or the Louis Vuitton shop, and he's just looky-looky. Another man pretends to be poor. He's, wearing simple clothes and driving a simple car, yet he has great wealth. Now, who is the man who can do business with you? One of the things you have to learn is to not look at the externals, because a lot of people today use credit cards and use debt to create the illusion of wealth, because they think that wealth will bring them respect. But it's not real. And if you start doing business with a person like that, one day you look around and you see that person and it all falls apart like a house of cards. Sometimes it's better to walk around and say, now who really has the money to do this business transaction? Many years ago, an old friend took me for a walk through Binondo, and he pointed out a man and he said, that is the richest man in all of Chinatown. And the guy was just wearing a simple t-shirt with no sleeves, simple shoes. I mean, this was old school Binondo back in the 80s. Simple slippers on his feet, simple pants. And I thought, that guy looks like he's got nothing. He said, yeah, but that's the richest man in Binondo. Now, why would he pretend to be poor? Well, sometimes you want people to not know what you have because you find out more how people will really treat you as a human being if you don't walk up all dressed fancy. And sometimes, Proverbs 13 verse 8, a man's riches may ransom his life, but a poor man hears no threats. An old friend told me one time, he said, the number one car, this was back in the 80s and 90s, the number one car that has armor plating put on it? I said, no. He said, just a simple Toyota. I said, you're kidding. He said, no. I said, I thought if you were going to spend all the money to put armor on a car, you'd get a Mercedes or something. He said, no. You don't want people to notice you. The simple cars, low profile, armor plating is the most secure. So sometimes when you have money, forgive me, it's better to dress down. It's better to not drive the flashy cars that attract so much attention. It's better to not create security issues for yourself. And it's interesting to see how people will treat you. Now, from the business perspective, if you're doing business with somebody, your first assessment should be, is this real money or is this pretend money?